Welcome to another episode of Dinosaurs and Mysteries. So in this episode, I want to talk about a subject to do with the unknown and the supernatural that, even though I think it's cool and I enjoy some of the films regarding it, it's not like right at the top of my interest in terms of horror and the supernatural, but it's something I started thinking about literally before. So I'm here at a graveyard once again, and I just thought, all these hundreds and hundreds of people, but we have films like Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead. What if there was actually an epidemic where someone risen from the grave and then another body risen from the grave, and one after the other they all started rising from the grave? Is there a difference between the zombie apocalypse and if the deceased just started rising from the graves? What would it be like? What would their intentions be? And how would we control it? How would we get over it? But I found it interesting, so I'm just going to go for a walk and discuss what on earth it would be like. So picture this, you're having a nice walk by yourself at the daytime or the evening, and you start seeing the ground move right in front of an old grave, and then slowly you see fingers and a hand, maybe even a head. What's your first thought? How do you react? Well, I know what you're thinking. Firstly, you would think, well, that's just something that would happen in the films. That's what the Dawn of the Dead, Night of the Living Dead started. That's what they created. That's where that comes from. That's where you think, when you think of people rising from the grave and terrorizing the living, it's from, people just assume it's from movies. But all these have roots. So all these tales and myths and legends, whether it's vampires, werewolves, or zombies, or the living dead, etc., those are rooted in, so at some point in history something has happened, or there has been an incident that has inspired those tales. So something similar at some point has happened. Obviously not on the scale of hundreds of people rising from the grave and attacking the living, but in similar to the vampire folklore, people do believe that in past tense and now, there are still people in the world that believe that these things can happen. And I absolutely love it, so that's why I'm talking about it. So back to the question, how would one react if they actually saw the ground moving in front of a grave, and they saw a half-rotten hand and fingers making their way break the earth, followed by a half-rotten head? Depending on how long the person's been down there. Well, at first, obviously, someone would panic, someone would scream, someone would think it was a prank, and next, I don't think the authorities would take it seriously at first. The police would probably come out, but they'd probably see it as more of, maybe someone's desecrated a grave, maybe someone has tried to dig up a corpse, and what this person is seeing is the remainder of that, like they've give up. So maybe they might think, oh, maybe it's a rare grave robbing incident, and then when they get here, they're surprised that this corpse is actually making its way out of the grave. What next? Well, that's a bit of a tricky one, isn't it? Because if the police came, or any kind of authorities came, and they saw someone clawing their way out of the grave, what are they going to do? They're not going to shoot it, are they? Because it might be a living person. It might be someone that's been buried alive, or it's been someone that has been, the victim of a crime. They can't exactly just taser them or shoot them. But as in most scenarios like this, by the time they realise that there's a threat, it's too late. So they can't exactly just shoot or tase someone because they think that it might be a zombie, because in reality, it could be a human that's heavily injured or that's been buried alive. So it would only be once it's fully risen and then lashes out, which they might decide to take force on the zombie, aka living dead. Which begs my next question. If they did rise from the grave, rise from the dead, what would their intentions be? Would it be slow, dim-witted corpses walking around trying to eat the flesh of the living? Or would it be something completely different? Would they have different intentions? What would be controlling them as they are dead, but yet up and moving? Now that's a good point. What controls them? Now, in the modern age, some people might think that it's actually going to be some kind of a virus breakthrough, that if people are affected by this virus, it turns them into zombie-like creatures, like a zombie-like state, or this virus could make them revive as a zombie after death. Personally, I like the traditional sense of it. I think that if this was to happen, it would be something more mystical and magical. There was something controlling them, or someone controlling them, whether it's through black magic, witchcraft, or spells of some kind, something more mystical that was behind the rising from the dead. And if that was the case, then you would have to find the person or being that has cast this curse, spell, voodoo on the world, the town, the city, or just individual people that then rise from the grave. But what would their intentions be? Why would this person do this? Is it to have a state where all the living turn into these puppets, and the more that they feast on the flesh of the living, the more powerful this voodoo practitioner, warlock, witch, human who's obsessed, and the more they feast on the flesh of the living, the more powerful this person gets? I know what you're thinking, this sounds absolutely bonkers. But it's a legit question. What would it mean if this was to happen? One day, all of a sudden, they all start rising from the grave, and they start coming towards you, and you don't know what their intentions are. I think there'd be different groups of people. You'd obviously have the army involved, the police involved, and then I think different groups of civilians would be approaching it in different ways. Some would be a more of aggressive way, literally going out there with weapons and just trying to kill as many of them as they could. Then you'd have people that were more barricading themselves, preparing, storing food, creating shelters in which they can't be penetrated. I think it would actually cause people to turn on each other. People would disagree with how to deal with it, and then it would cause more chaos because the humans would end up turning on each other because they disagreed with how to deal with it, or some of them just didn't believe it was happening. They'd be in denial. And then, as humans do, they would find a way to turn on each other rather than solve the problem. What if it spread worldwide? What if every single county, village, town, city, country in the world had this epidemic? Would they have to resort to dramatic measures like using nuclear weapons, regardless of the aftermath? So there you have it. One day, there's some guy out there making a YouTube video, walking around a graveyard, and he starts to see something moving in front of a really old grave. The ground breaks, rotting hands start to appear, rotting head starts to appear. Once fully out of the ground, this corpse, this walking corpse, starts approaching him, lunging at him in a slightly dim-witted manner. Does this guy film it or run away? And the next thing, more start rising. They start walking in the same direction, like they're being controlled by a higher power. And then all hell will break loose. The epidemic will slowly spread out. the town will slowly realize what's happening. Groups of people will take different measures, and then, as humans do, they will disagree with what they're doing, they'll disagree with their actions, they'll disagree with the plans, and then the humans will start turning on each other just as bad as the living dead are turning on them. So there we have it, the living dead. If it was to happen, if it was real, what would it look like and how would it go down? Personally, I like to think there'd be more of a supernatural, mystical, magical reason behind it. The virus idea is more modernized, but I like to think it's like a voodoo practitioner or someone who practices black magic is cast a curse on a town, and the more that these living dead feast on the flesh and blood of the living, the more powerful this, high voodoo priest gets. But that's just me. Anyway, I've quite enjoyed making this. It's been quite fun. Something different. I don't cover living dead or zombies that often. So yeah. Anyway, if you've enjoyed this video, please give me a like and a subscribe. I keep floating around 920, 925 subscribers. I'm trying to get to 1,000. So yeah. Anyway, if you've enjoyed this video, go check out my other videos. I'm more knowledgeable on other subjects. I just thought this was really fun to talk about. And to be honest, I'm going to find myself watching documentaries and other videos regarding this subject now, because it's really intrigued me. So yeah, anyway, as ever, stay safe.